right, good morning. We'll call our October meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. It's a great day. The weather's cool. We'll have great football weather tomorrow, and it's Friday, so what better? And then we've got a gentleman that's I'm envious of. He's getting to retire, so it is a great day. Darrell Ford began employment as a bus driver in 1975, and his father was a bus driver prior to that, but Darrell's was promoted to supervisor in 81 and has been a route supervisor for 34 years, and says he's a big supporter of Sooner football and a diehard Green Bay Packers fan. Now that's they're a long ways apart, but are you Darrell? Oh, okay. Yeah, if you'd come up front with me a minute. We've got a resolution here that says Darrell Ford has faithfully supported and served the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority from April 21st, 1975 till October 1st. And whereas with that 40 years of time and energy to providing professional service to the citizens of Oklahoma, Central Oklahoma. Therefore, Cotpa is formally express its deep appreciation and gratitude for all you've done for the authority and the citizens of Central Oklahoma. And therefore, we resolve that today this resolution has been presented to you as a symbol of the high esteem in which regard to your service that was held, and a token of our sincere and heartfelt wishes for great success in retirement.
Thank you, sir.
And, I always put a retiree on the spot and ask you to tell us one thing that you think could improve your job and what you've done over the last 40 years. And be frank. You don't work here anymore, so you can tell us the truth.
More buses on the street and longer running time. That's probably the best thing we can do. More buses, right.
That's what you see.
Yeah. More buses. Yeah. Cut the time down. People have to ride. That would be it.
Any other recommendations?
No, I just miss everybody at Cotpa and Embark, and I'll truly miss everybody.
What are you going to do?
Camp a lot and just lay around. Thank you, sir.
Also, and I don't know if everybody knows, but we've got another retiree that this will be her last official meeting, and that is Susan, after spending 7.5 years as our, what's your official secretary? Well, there's a more official title than that, but I know we're going to miss you. She's moving to North Carolina. It's a big step to pick up and just say, boy, here's what I'm going to do, and I'm proud of you, and I think that's great, and we're going to miss you, and keep in touch so we know what you're doing. All right. All right. Do we have any citizens to be heard this morning? If not, we have our minutes of our September meeting. If there are no corrections, deletions, then I would have a motion to approve our minutes.
Move for approval.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We've got a rather short, kind of a short meeting, but we do have a presentation on the Northwest Corridor multimodal concept plan before we get into our agenda. And If we would, let's have that presentation now, I think.
Mr. Chairman, trustees, we want to present to you the initial results of this Northwest Multimodal Corridor concept planning. And today I'm actually joined by Dennis Blind with the Oklahoma City Planning Department and with Shane Hampton of the OU Institute for Quality Communities. They're going to present probably the bulk of the presentation today. And but we're going to tell you some basic things about the corridor, a little bit about why study the Northwest Corridor, and also about that US DOT beta test approach, about using healthy planning principles in corridor planning. We're also going to say a little bit about goals and how that relates to that planning framework, and then get into some of the issues that exist in that corridor, look at some what-ifs, and then end with a little bit on next steps about the corridor. Kind of as you might remember, might imagine, this planning has its roots in the 2005 fixed guideway planning that was done by Cotpa. And really what this really involves is that corridor that starts around downtown, goes out Classen Boulevard, and then out the Northwest Expressway. This particular corridor that we're studying, though, doesn't go all the way to Kilpatrick like the 2005 study. It really ends at about Meridian. We wanted to do something that seemed more reasonable and easy enough to try to do in the time that we had. And you're going to see a lot of concepts today about how things might look, how transit might fit in a multimodal scheme like this. They're intentionally not extremely exotic, but the thing is they're very thought-provoking nonetheless, and potentially there's an opportunity to do something more in some future round of planning. Well, we wanted to try to study this corridor, do some planning in it for a long time, and it's been challenging because we've always been thinking really big about trying to do the kind of study we did for streetcar, which involves really a pretty high budget. Tried to compete for some federal grants to do that, and really didn't succeed. But in this case, about last fall, the US DOT wanted to find some cities that wanted to try to pilot test a health and planning framework for corridor planning. And we thought that really fit well, considering Embark's kind of history in terms of working with public health and trying to provide for health. And so applied. There were about 30 different cities that were interested. 5 were selected. 2 out of the 5 were cities that wanted to do something that was mainly a transit corridor planning effort. And so that's what we did. And again, this concept planning addresses that combination of Classen and then going out the Northwest Expressway, sort of what could you do if you wanted to have a one-seat ride in that corridor? And so this kind of an approach is basically about trying to humanize the typical transportation corridor planning process with 6 steps that are part of that healthy planning framework. And we were able to get through about 4 of the steps, really maybe partly into the 5th. And we won't go into all the details about what those are, but it's really been a very helpful framework to try to utilize. And in a state like ours, where health outcomes tend to be in the bottom 6 or 7 in the nation, and since it's pretty much a common fact that the interior of cities is where some of the worst health outcomes are, this approach of trying to emphasize health and transportation really made a lot of sense. And so we were excited to be able to get started. And I guess even more recently excited to see things like this announcement that the owners of the Gold Dome are entertaining 2 different grocers that might put in a store there. That's the kind of land use types of change, healthy types of land use change that would be great to see happen in this kind of corridor. As you all know, that's the junction of our 2 busiest bus routes, 23rd and Classen. Well, even though Cotpa was able to get the city selected, we realized that it really didn't make sense for us to try to do something like this on our own. And so we wanted to reach out to 3 other planning partners and work closely with them. And those are the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, ACOG, the Oklahoma City Planning Department, and also City County Health, because they have a community planning function there as well. And to their credit, they were willing to meet basically every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. for weeks upon weeks to try to do some of the background work. But I think that the group recognized that this is a very multimodal corridor, not just about transit. It's about how bicyclists and pedestrians get across. There are needs of motorists, and so they really suggested, and they're right, that we need to emphasize that multimodal aspect of it. And so even though there were these 4 planning agencies, there was really a need to establish some type of an advisory focus group. This would be a pretty common step. And so what you really have are private companies, such as American Fidelity, Penn Square, OCU, even the Greater OKC Chamber were involved in this advisory focus group. And then there were health concerns as well, health entities, like Integris Health, like the Oklahoma Health Equity Campaign, and some nonprofits like Neighborhood Alliance. Because, you know, I think that the four planning partners recognize that, you know, it's not enough just to have a bunch of planners talking about this in a room. You need to be able to bounce these ideas off of people who actually have more of a stake in the corridor, because that's where they are. You know, that's where their businesses are. And they gave us some great perspectives, and that was good. That advisory focus group even had a self-selected health subcommittee that really helped us with health goals, health criteria, and identifying health issues. So that was good. But in addition, you know, it made a lot of sense to try to find a more neutral outside group to assist us. And so we issued a grant. The University of Oklahoma Institute for Quality Communities was awarded the grant to be a resource in this process. And Shane Hampton and a number of students have done some really very interesting, great work along the corridor. Well, you know, the four planning partners worked to try to determine some of the more interesting locations. And again, that idea that this corridor would start downtown and end at about Meridian Avenue. And so even though there are a number of locations that would merit more in-depth planning, these were the 5 or 6 that seemed most interesting. And they were selected based on some criteria, things like the existence of bus service, they're likely tied to health, the population or job densities around those locations, just as kind of a way to have a focus. So, goals. Let me just say a little bit about this. The actual goals that are transportation goals are out on the website, as are the transportation and health goals are both out there. But I should mention that this USDOT Public Health and the Transportation Corridor Planning Beta Test has a number of steps and a lot of concepts. And really, I think this slide kind of explains the framework pretty well. It's this idea that basically, when you're looking at a planning corridor, the ideas and issues sort of evolve into priorities and goals. And goals are a lot of times so general that you need something, you know, an objective that's more specific. But in order to achieve something, you have to take a step. You have to have a strategy, and so you identify those. But even as you're thinking about strategies, you want to be careful to have something that you call criteria, something that you would sort of measure a possible action against before you go to too much expense or too much effort to try to implement that. And so these terms are very, very important and really integrated in many of those first 4 steps or so of it. Transportation is linked to health in so many ways, and really with that, my part of the presentation is done. But Dennis Blind's got a lot of very, very interesting material to present to you, and Shane has some concept examples I think you'll find very intriguing. So, Dennis Blind, Oklahoma City Planning Department, take it from here.
Thanks, Larry. All right, before I dive into the different transportation and health issues that we looked at from a planning perspective, kind of high-altitude look at a concept level, I just want to go over some of the different, we have on the slide here, jargon, all the different terms that we use in transportation planning and that apply or may not apply to this corridor. So first off, you know, this is a slide that's shown all over the place, just a wacky interchange like this, unusual transportation, is the caption. I think what the really wacky thing is about this slide is that's only 3 different interchanges superimposed on each other. So that's, those are real, they exist in the United States, and it's 3 of them. So that's obviously not the solution anybody wants, nor is it the solution, we as a planning team are looking for. So when we talk about modes of transportation, most people think, okay, car, bus, plane, train. All these pictures up here, these are all modes of transportation. You got a whole variety of things that create transportation modes. So are we going to look at every mode out there that's available on Class and a Northwest Expressway? No. What are we going to look at? This corridor, what's it really best suited for? Well, local bus service, obviously. Embark has a route on Route 5 is on Classen right now. So that's an obvious choice, a mode that we need to look at. How can we better accommodate local bus service on this corridor? We also want to look at bicycle and pedestrian modes, not only in the corridor, but across the corridor and connecting to the corridor. It's vital to have good pedestrian and cycling connections to a corridor like this to improve your transit service and to improve ridership. So those we're going to look at. We all know the downtown streetcar. There's just action on it this week. That's coming along. Is that a potential mode for this corridor? Well, potentially, but at this high-level concept stage, we're not drilling in and saying that's the mode. But it is a possibility. It's right downtown. It's close to the corridor. And it's great that it's being implemented downtown. Another mode, bus rapid transit. This mode was brought up in the 2005 study that Larry mentioned earlier. Bus rapid transit it's a bus, but it's a higher technology. It has a sleeker look. It has a lower platform, meaning it's more like a mass transit stop, or like the streetcar that'll be right at grade when it comes to the boarding and unloading platform. You walk right into the bus itself. Buses can be set up to, like in this graphic shows, they can have a bus-only lane, a lane just for them, for efficiency and timing in the corridor and your service and increase your ridership. It can also be in a corridor that has, as shown in the graphic, you've got a bike lane there, you've got a pedestrian way where the platform is, you've got a great crosswalk identified, you've got streetscape, you've got landscaping, you've got signage. All these elements go into a successful corridor, and they all need to fit and work well with the transit and the different multimodal options. Another thing about the bus rapid transit, it was brought up in the 05 study, and we see time and time again all across the country where they're implemented. They can run with traffic or on their separate lane, like I showed on that graphic. They're very flexible. They have, you can have Wi-Fi. You can have a lot of technology within that attracts ridership. They also, you can get, onboard ticketing. You can get everything at the platform, like shows in the picture. So you can everything's done electronically. You get your ticket, get on, and go. And that, again, increases your headways, increases ridership. The easier you make it, the more user-friendly you make it, your ridership will increase. So those are things that we were looking at. Now, when we dive into the transportation and the different land use and health issues, first thing we started with was the recently passed comprehensive plan, Plan OKC, for the city. In the land use map, future land use map, this corridor is, from the right button here, it's right in this area right there. And as you'll notice, we've got these little round circles on there. So even in our land use plan, we're identifying transit-oriented development opportunity nodes along Classen and Northwest Expressway. So not only did all the city planning efforts support this corridor, but it also enhances, the viability of this corridor to move forward. Employment densities are very good in this area. Obviously down this is a heat map. So when you look at the red there, that's a high density. That's a lot of employment. So that's downtown, in that area of downtown. We move up through Classen, it drops off a little bit, but there's still a lot of employment and employers on Classen. And then you make the turn on Northwest Expressway, and again, the employment picks right back up when we get into a hot zone, into the red area. So the densities, too, are very compatible to assist and enhance transit. The existing bus routes that I mentioned, we've got 5 that goes Classen and continues north. To date, we don't have any route specifically on Northwest Expressway, but we have a variety of routes that cross over and intersect it. So there's a lot of different ways that we can enhance this area too and improve it. Sidewalks, connectivity to where we want to get to that corridor. Obviously, a lot of red, like little web looking there, that's all the sidewalk networks closer into town. We have great connectivity, and Shane will talk about that in the analysis that he and the students did. When we get up in the Northwest Expressway, it falls off. The sidewalks aren't there. So connectivity for walking and cycling is a big issue in that area of the corridor. We jump into here, we start just looking at where are grocery stores, where are they located, where are parks, libraries, cultural amenities, schools that are along the corridor, and they're all along the corridor. And the coloring on the corridor, I should have mentioned earlier, the first color is about a quarter-mile distance on each side of the corridor. The other one's about a half-mile. So we're looking, and again, Shane will get into this, we're looking at walkability distances, cycling distances. What do we have within that corridor to make it successful, more successful? And moving on, the health, here are all the different health institutions, health providers in the corridor itself. I mean, not all of them, but the major ones. And so you can see we got a lot of red dots up and down there. So it tied in very well with USDOT's, this new initiative of transportation and health planning being combined together when you look at a corridor. And so what that result, all of our analysis resulted, and as a team and through the steering committee, the stakeholder group, we identified these 7 locations, starting out there in the northwest, out at Meridian, 63rd, Independence, Classen Northwest Expressway, 30th, 23rd, and 10th, to be kind of, they rose to the top to take a little dive, deeper dive into them to see what could we do there, how do they look now, and how can we improve them to enhance this corridor. And that was the challenge then that we handed off to IQC. So Shane's going to talk about some what-if scenarios in those key locations.
All right. So first of all, just thank you for the opportunity to put our students to work on this project. We love getting the students involved in real locations in Oklahoma City where they can see how these things work in real life. So the 3 locations that I'm going to talk about today are kind of representative of the different types of locations we saw from those 7. So 23rd and Classen, one of the more urban locations, and then Blackwelder, sort of at the center of the corridor, and Independence as you start moving towards the more suburban areas of the corridor. For each of these locations, we have the students look in detail within a half-mile and 1-mile radius. Those are 10-minute walk and bike distances. We looked at potential improvements that would allow people to walk or bike to the station locations safely. And then we took a very close look at the intersection specifically to see how an intersection on a roadway like Northwest Expressway could be safe for a transit location and for pedestrians to cross. I'll start with 23rd and Classen. Everyone's familiar with this one. You got the Gold Dome here, and then 23rd Street, Classen. Some pretty narrow sidewalks on the northeast corner where we have some historic buildings. Asian District. Right now, Classen at this intersection is 6 travel lanes, 2 left turn lanes onto 23rd Street. We have some bus stops here, new shelter also installed by the Walgreens on the south side of this street. It's really kind of an iconic intersection for Oklahoma City. The Milk Bottle, the Gold Dome, the Classen Tower. You know where you are when you see a picture like this. We even caught people cycling on Classen, so there are people who are doing it today. Again, there's this problem with the pretty narrow sidewalk. It's pretty uncomfortable to walk through there between, pretty quick traffic on Classen and then the building pressed right up against the street. Shelby, our GIS student, analyzed a lot of the data that Oklahoma City has. So 23rd, compared to a lot of the other locations, really good sidewalk and street connectivity. So pretty good access to this location. Great transit service already at this intersection with Route 5 and 23, 2 of Embark's busiest routes.
I'm sorry, Shane, could you say that again? Great transit service already. Thank you.
Relative, it's all relative, right? Yeah. So 23rd, new night service, a little more frequent Sunday service, one of the special routes, and Route 5 soon to join that, as you all know. This is another sort of, the 2 circles in this diagram represent half-mile and 1 mile, which are theoretically 10-minute walking and biking distances, but the street network and the sidewalk network determine how far you could actually go in that area. So in areas where we have fewer streets, these distances start to look much smaller where you can actually access within 10 minutes. In the case of 23rd, like I said, it's pretty good. You can access most of those areas. What we did was look at design concepts with 2 alternatives for each of the locations. The first alternative was a very basic set of improvements, and then the second alternative, which is what I'll go over today, was more robust alternatives that really focused on making multimodal corridor the priority there. So this is the same aerial image I showed you earlier, only in our computer world that our students created. You can see the gold dome again to orient you. And this is the alternative that we designed for this intersection. First thing was big, bold, zebra-style continental crosswalks for the intersection for higher visibility compared to the colored concrete that sort of starts to fade over the years. So that makes the actual crossing of the intersection a little bit safer. We've also demonstrated the idea of dedicated transit lanes in the outer lanes of Classen. These lanes could also be used for right-turning traffic, turning in and out of businesses, driveways along the corridor. So essentially when you have lots and lots of traffic turning right, it can really delay that outside lane as it is. We also see a lot of rear-end collisions occur in that location since people are turning right without a blinker and other fast traffic isn't expecting them to do so. So the outer lane can sometimes be less efficient traffic mover. So by sort of setting that lane aside for transit vehicles and the right turning traffic, you can allow the transit vehicles to have some priority in the corridor, but also kind of clear the central two lanes for traffic that's going a longer distance. So it can provide benefits to traffic as well. We have had comments about the left lane on Classen 2 and how that lane can experience the same issue with so many people trying to turn left. So possibly with a design like this, you would consider limiting where people can turn left along Classen, or providing more left turn pockets in the median on Classen to, make those two inner lanes function really effectively if you're going to use the dedicated lane for transit. Some other things we have at this location, just the enhanced type of transit platform that comes with bus rapid transit. Things like, covered shelters, weather protection, but also wayfinding, maybe digital signage saying when the next bus is going to arrive in real time, possibly ticket kiosks so that people could purchase their ticket before boarding the bus. Paying the fare as you're boarding is one of the major sources of delay for bus services. So by kind of doing all these small things to speed up the process of boarding, unloading, and the actual travel for the transit vehicle, you can sort of improve BRT's performance over local bus. We've also kind of focused in these areas on the connecting transit routes, so making sure that the transit stop for the Northwest Corridor is also in very close proximity to intersecting transit stops like 23rd Street so that people can easily transfer and quickly transfer from the Northwest Corridor service to another local service. In this location, we also wanted to address the narrow sidewalk on the northwest corner of the intersection. So Matt Crownover, our design student, came up with the idea of removing one of the two southbound left turn lanes, lengthening the remaining turn lane to sort of make up for that, and then returning that space to the sidewalk in front of the building. So again, just kind of what-if concepts for, if we really wanted to prioritize multimodal transportation and sort of multimodal land uses in this area, what could we do? Again, this is another view showing that expanded sidewalk here in the bottom right corner, and then the transit lanes and enhanced transit shelters. Moving on to Blackwelder, Northwest Expressway is really a totally different animal. We've looked at a lot of streets over the years at IQC, including like Western Avenue, Northwest 23rd Street, but looking at Northwest Expressway was a really fun challenge for us because it's a totally different category of roadway. Currently, Northwest Expressway does not have crosswalks at any location. Here's, again, our computer world creation of Blackwelder. No way to cross the street here. There are people who, especially cyclists, who use this intersection to cross because Blackwelder is a really good cycling street, one of those long, straight, minor arterial corridors through neighborhoods with slow traffic speeds that cyclists really like to use. So we did observe several cyclists passing through this intersection. But the light is sort of timed for vehicles, so they can have trouble getting across the 8 lanes here. That's the wrong way. So the design recommendations for this corridor, because the traffic speeds are high, the traffic volumes are very high, and the crossing distance for pedestrians is pretty long, we've demonstrated a 2-stage crosswalk at this location, expanding the median to provide a refuge area in the center, so pedestrians would cross only 3 lanes at a time. So if you were crossing here, you'd press the button, cross to the central platform, and then the light would be timed to make this happen quickly, but you could press the second button and make it the rest of the way across. The 2-stage crosswalk can also provide a benefit to traffic flow on a street like Northwest Expressway, where commuter volumes are really important, because if you are holding the red light for pedestrians to cross sort of the eastbound lanes, the traffic could actually still be going on the westbound lanes while pedestrians are crossing to the median refuge. So this can actually shorten the amount of time that the light has to be red in either direction for Northwest Expressway, in addition to making it a little bit easier for pedestrians to cross. For our Northwest Expressway locations, another thing that came out as very important was sort of getting the buses out of the primary traffic lanes whenever they're stopping to pick up passengers or to let passengers off. So we've demonstrated a turnout pocket here for this bus, and in this case, there was already an existing right turn lane for people going into the Lions Bank Tower area. So using that again as a combined bus and right turn lane so that the bus doesn't have to stop in the fast-moving traffic lanes, which can be a safety hazard in addition to traffic volume sort of impact there. Again, the enhanced transit shelters, and thinking about which of these locations are popularly accessed by bicycle, and what kind of bicycle parking facilities do you have at the transit locations? Normally a BRT vehicle would also accommodate bicycles if you wanted to bring your bicycle with you to your destination, but maybe some people would prefer to leave their bicycle at a secure parking spot at the platform. Okay, another view of the sort of enhanced bus platforms, and again we've used the sort of sleeker, more modern-looking bus that's common with BRT. These come with, enhanced amenities and also often enhanced branding. So maybe this would be called like the Big Blue Thunder Bus or something to sort of differentiate it from other transit services. Moving on to Independence, I think this was probably our favorite location to look at. One of our students went to the elementary school just a couple blocks from here. Another one lived in an apartment really close to here, and my grandma lives in the neighborhood. I've always told her I was going to do something to give her sidewalks. But this was a really complex intersection. Also, one of the iconic intersections on this corridor, because we have anchors like the Integris Hospital, the former Marriott Hotel here, important destination, a lot of high-rise housing and denser apartment housing in this area, so lots of pretty dense employment and population here. Again, the sort of computer world representation of this, very complex. You have not only Northwest Expressway intersecting Independence kind of at a strange angle, you also have the access road here on the south that is used for emergency vehicles for Integris, as well as people entering and exiting Integris's parking facilities. And here's sort of the design recommendations that we have here. Again, we have a 2-stage crosswalk of Northwest Expressway with an additional unsignalized, this would only be a marked crossing here. So some traffic calming, trying to get slow traffic on here. Perhaps you could have LED flashing beacons here for greater awareness when pedestrians are actually crossing. We've used the side median as the transit stop location, and again tried to pull the buses out of the primary lanes of traffic for their stop. The other thing that this allows by positioning the bus stop with its own lane in this fashion is a queue jump. So a queue jump lane allows this bus with a special signal on the far side. The signal would change to green about 3 or 5 seconds before the rest of the traffic lanes would turn green, so the bus would be able to take off a little bit sooner and merge with the existing traffic lanes on the far side. So another one of those small features that allows BRT to excel in performance over local bus service. And again, with attention to the intersecting transit routes, we've thought about the existing bus service that travels south down Independence and relocated a transit shelter closer to the corner with a bus turnout lane to prevent queuing through the intersection behind the bus, so that people could easily transfer from the Northwest Corridor to a bus that could take them, sort of circulates around this area, so they could get to destinations that are maybe a little bit further from the corridor itself. Another view of that intersection. So the other locations that we looked at, and I won't go over today, Meridian, Tulsa, or around Northwest Expressway and 63rd, 30th, and 10th Street. So some interesting things that came out of the, especially the further out locations like 63rd Street, ideas about park and ride locations, because people are probably more likely to be accessing some of those transit stops by car in that area, so providing park and ride locations for them. And also kind of making those park and rides fun is kind of what the students were thinking about. So maybe built into those park and rides, can you have special facilities for a food truck or coffee truck to pull up to that location in the morning and make it sort of more fun for people to ride the transit there. So that's the locations we have. Turn it back over to Larry.
Yeah, just a couple of last comments are about next steps, and Jason may want to add in a little bit here as well. You know, really the next steps are to have additional outreach at meetings. We had a great community meeting just Tuesday night. Any groups that want to hear the presentation, glad to come out and do that. So the continuing educational presentations at groups is important. The U.S. DOT will be sending us the results of the health beta test, you know, for them to look at how we use that framework, and they'll have some suggestions. We're still waiting on that. And then we'll also be composing a concept plan report. So it'll have a lot of the material that you've seen today, but it'll also include the other 3 locations, I guess 4 locations that Shane had mentioned, and it'll have some other ideas as well, such as park and ride, which somehow that didn't get into the slide presentation, you know, because park and ride was also a pretty important aspect of the multimodal planning. So, you know, next steps is that there probably needs to be some additional planning and design, if that's really what the community and what leadership wants to see happen. But perhaps in the shorter term, try to identify some, as it says, interim implementation projects, low-cost, high-impact types of improvements that might not go as to the degree that some of the concepts show, but at least a part of that. And then also a look at funding options for the future. And really, with that, that's basically our presentation. If you have any questions, and between I and Dennis and Shane and Jason, I'm sure we can answer those. Thank you.
All right, Larry, thank you. Any questions, any of the trustees?
I think I'd just like to remind the community, anybody that's watching, we've used the term concept, we've used the term what if, and that's really the intent of this study, was just to kind of start dialogue and then decide, is enhanced transit and connectivity on one of the busiest corridors in Oklahoma City, is it possible? What would it look like? And then there's additional and lots of additional planning that would be needed. But it's a start to start looking in that direction.
All right, thank you. All right, we have 3 items on our consent docket. Would the trustees have any questions on any of those 3? If not, I'd have a motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We have 4 items on our individual consideration. The first one is an RFP for new equipment and software for Spokie's bike share system, and authorize the administrator to advertise and release the RFP.
Yes, this RFP, again, will allow for us to look at new equipment options and software for the Spokie's bike share program. New equipment, of course, including additional bicycles for the system. As you'll recall, the system was actually implemented several years ago by the City of Oklahoma City's Office of Sustainability. Downtown OKC helped manage it, and then Cotpa took over the administration of the program in 2014. And as we're aware, we have went through a significant rebranding process. We have refurbished all of the bikes, and so we now feel like we're to the point where we had a very successful reboot. The bikes have all been repaired or in good condition, and so now what is the next step to improve the program and be able to expand it? And so this RFP will allow us to look at the option for purchasing new additional bikes for the system, bikes that are easier to ride, bikes that have gears, bikes that are more durable. In addition to that, kiosks that are more user-friendly and provide better reporting for management. So yeah, with the issuance of this request for proposal, we'll be able to start looking at those options for more system enhancements.
The operator that we have for this, are they familiar with purchasing bicycles or helping?
Yes. Actually, Bicycle Management Systems, our contractor, Brent, he's been very involved in helping us actually put together the scope for the RFP. He's very familiar with other systems and other technologies that are out there.
Good.
And as well as Jeannie. Jeannie's spent a lot of time working on this RFP too. We've actually had different vendors come out and kind of showcase some of their products. I think we've been educated very quickly on the options that are available.
Well, good. All right. Do we have a motion to approve item A?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item B is approval of the final plans and specifications for the Union Station roof Phase 2, and authorize the administrator to advertise and release the bid.
Yes, Phase 2 of the roof is for actually the section of the roof for Union Station that you really don't see. Back in January of 2013, the board approved final acceptance on the Phase 1, which was the tiled gabled roof. This is the area of the roof that's further south. If we've all been in Union Station, basically the area that covers the conference room, where Susan offices, the kitchen area. And so Phase 2 will replace and renovate that section of the roof. It's primarily being funded through transit enhancement funds that are part of our formula grant. And the transit enhancement funds, as part of the formula grant we receive, we have to use 1% for transit enhancement projects. And so rehabilitation to historic buildings or transit facilities, signage, bus stops, all those things kind of fall into this transit enhancement funding. So I mentioned that just to say that the primary funding source for this is not taking away from any of the grant funding we would use for replacement of rolling stock.
Okay. And that would be the final of all the work that needs to be done on?
Well, for the roof, we still have a HVAC project that we'll be bringing to the board for Union Station to replace some of the heat pumps and so forth in the building.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve item B? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item C is adoption of a resolution authorizing application for financial assistance from ACOG for public fleet conversion grant funds.
Yeah, ACOG has established a clean air grants for public fleet conversion program. And these funds are used to help public entities contribute to meeting Clean Air Act requirements. The funds are actually congestion mitigation air quality funds. They're part of the MAP 21 legislation. And ACOG has $350,000 available for this year for the program. It is a competitive grant program. We are submitting an application for $250,000 of that funding that's available to help go towards the construction and the purchase of equipment, I should say the purchase of equipment specifically for a CNG fueling station. And so part of the grant application requires the governing body to approve a resolution to apply for the grant.
All right. Then do I hear a motion to approve item C? All in favor? Opposed? And our last item is a change order to the contract for elevator modernization for the Santa Fe parking garage.
Change order number 1 is with W.L. McNatt and Company. That's the general contractor that's overseeing the modernization project. Modernization project being the replacement of the 4 elevators that are in the Santa Fe garage. There's quite a few items on this change order. The total amount of the change order is $61,124, or a 7.7% increase to the original contract amount of $792,000. So I thought what I would do is try to hit or touch upon some of the more significant items that are included in the change order. One of the items that we had to add was additional lighting to the elevator pits for elevators 3 and 4. Elevators 3 and 4 are the elevators in the south tower that have been, at this point, replaced with the new equipment has been replaced. The old equipment has been replaced with the new equipment. That sounds better. And so the cost of that lighting was $4,837. There's also an item on there to replace the glass and the framing for the elevator lobbies on the 6th and 7th floors, again on that south tower. And this was to prevent water intrusion into the elevator shafts and, of course, on the new equipment. That was a cost of $15,152. Elevators 3 and 4 also required additional sump pumps and drain pits, as well as a new air conditioning or heating and ventilation system, additional duct work. That cost was $41,255. And that was one of the issues that caused us problems with the elevators in the past, as we didn't have adequate ventilation and cooling capabilities in that particular elevator tower, particularly with the heat that we experienced in the summer, and that was causing some of the problems that we were having with the elevators. One of the other items on here is to replace the worn-out sheaves on elevator 4 at a cost of $24,030. Wanted to talk about this because we have installed the new equipment in for elevators 3 and 4 in the south tower. We have had some issues with the equipment as we brought them online. However, and unfortunately, one of the issues with one of the new elevators is this sheave, or I think of it as a bearing assembly, but it's part of the elevator system. Think of it as, I think, basically like a big kind of a round wheel where the cables go over. This is not part of the new equipment that the general contractor has been replacing. So unfortunately, we got the new elevator in, and then we had this other part fail on us. So we had to add that to the change order, and that elevator currently is still down because we're waiting on this part. So once that work is complete, then both of the elevators on the south tower should be operational. And although we did have some pretty significant kinks and bugs to work out when we brought those 2 new elevators online, the one new elevator that is operational has been trouble-free now for a week or more. So we think we've got a lot of those kinks worked out. Which brings me to the next item to talk about, and that is part of this change order is also an additional cost of $26,758. And this is because we have actually asked the general contractor to alter the original plans for elevator replacement. Rather than taking the 2 down that are left in the north tower at the same time, because of the issues we've had with the new equipment and the fact that we now have this other issue with the elevator sheave gone bad, we have asked the contractor to just take the 2 remaining elevators down one at a time. And so that is causing some additional expense because we have to build some temporary barricades. We have to bring in some temporary power to power one of the elevators while the other one is down. So there's some additional expense associated with that. But I think from a customer experience perspective, it's well worth it. We want to try to minimize any negative impact that the elevator replacement project will have on our customers. In fact, one of the things that we are doing, again, to try to mitigate some of that challenge we're having with the elevator replacement project is until both of the new elevators are operational, we've been using a shuttle service to provide some of the relief to the lines and people needing to use the elevator during the AM and PM peak times, and basically providing, a shuttle to their cars in order to try to provide as best customer service as we can, considering some of the equipment issues we're having. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions about the change order.
All right. Any questions? Then do I hear a motion to approve? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Our next item is ratification of claims and payrolls for September 1st through September 30th. If the trustees don't have any questions, I would have a motion to ratify. All in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you. Financial reports, anything quick that you'd like to mention on that?
Yeah, on the transportation financial report, page 2, just wanted to point out under the revenue section, the federal grant revenue. This is the reimbursement revenue that we received from our formula grant. You'll notice the variance here is showing a negative $592,000 for the year. And we've experienced this in the past. This is just a timing issue of when the reimbursement was actually booked. For August, we actually took a grant draw of $492,049, which actually puts us closer to about 85% of what we would expect. So again, that discrepancy there is just due to a timing, and you should see a change on the next month report. On the parking system, probably the thing to point out here under the operating revenues, last month when we looked at the parking revenues, we were at about 92.4% of the budget. You can see that now through 2 months of the year, we've actually are at 117% of the budget on the revenue that we receive from monthly on the parking revenue. So we've made up considerable ground on our revenue collections. And then on the river report, I think I would just highlight the fact that we are pretty much right on budget, both revenues and expenditures for river operations, which is a good way to start the year for us. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions on the finances.
All right. Any questions? Not, then I'd have a motion to receive our financial reports.
Move the item.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Our program reports, our transit system report.
Thanks, Gene.
You heard our supervisor, more buses and less headway.
Nice to see you, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, trustees, good morning. Thanks for having us. I'd like to address 4 topics of the August 15th monthly transit report: safety, ridership, on-time performance, and our year-to-date attainment of performance measures. We experienced 5 non-preventable accidents during the month of August 2015, and we caused 6 preventable accidents, which is the same number of accidents from the previous month and considerably higher than what we normally experience. Our 3-month rolling average for preventable accidents is now 4.7. Last night at 10 o'clock, we completed our quarterly safety training, during which we presented a collage of actual clips of us being in accidents with the driver's face obscured, so that everyone in the room then could experience the trauma of being in the driver's pod and come up with strategies where we could have avoided similar accidents. We discussed many topics. Chief among them are to be constantly aware of the circumstances around the bus, ever-changing. Keep your head moving, but don't be stuck. Just keep moving at all times. To be conservative around stoplights, I have a little orange car, and occasionally I almost run a stoplight, and it's, one-third the size of a bus. To be very careful that our passengers are secure when pulling away from bus stops, and to never, ever, ever, ever allow on-time performance to influence the way they operate the bus. We also presented our enhanced safety program. Some key components, and I kind of touched on it the last time that I saw y'all, is a daily safety message that is about current events and timely, that will be presented at the start of each shift in person and discussed, briefly for a couple of minutes. And we're also going to have that safety message broadcast at least twice by an unnamed broadcaster and ever rotating broadcaster to increase the buzz of the safety message. So they'll be thinking to themselves, the road soups and the operators themselves, who was that masked broadcaster? Was it Freddie the driver? Was it Jason? Was it the janitor? Was it the daughter of whomever? And it'll be constantly changing. Additionally, I walk around with a couple of chocolates in my pocket to reward the employees who can correctly recite the safety message. The safety message is going to be the mantra. Now, last night at the end of the meeting, I said to everyone, I asked everyone's permission if I could report to you that each one of them was going to renew their commitment to safety, and they granted that to me. Ooh, ridership. If you look at the presentation slide, you'll see that we were slightly above August in daily riders on our daily fixed route, Monday through Friday. We were above it by approximately 2%, but we're close to the record of an increase. Our downtown discovery was up 6.7% from previous August. The average Saturday ridership for our systems route was up 2% from the previous August, and our downtown Saturday discovery was down 14%. It was an odd month. We had 5 Saturdays during the month of August. Link service, we had the same number of riders per day as the previous year, which was 52. Our new night service, and I hope you all saw the article in the paper the other day with regards to the fellow that owns the Earl's Rib, whatever the heck it is, talking favorably of us. And, it was one of his employees that was sitting next to me the first night of service on our night service, and I won't mention his name, but he said to me that as a result of that, he could work an extra shift and make $50. It was from the same business. It's a great benefit to our passengers. It was up, as you can see, from 181 to 202, so we broke the 200 mark, which is about a 12% increase. Our on-time performance. Our on-time performance was essentially the same that it has been from the previous month, and of course we're working on various strategies to increase that. Our report card. We were, number of passengers per service hour, we were above 97%. Number of passengers per operating day, we're right there. The number of on-time, or percent of on-time bus arrivals, we are at 91% and working on that diligently. And the number of vehicle accidents per 100,000 miles, we are exceeding our goal by 50%. We have many strategies in place and a renewed commitment on everyone's part to get that number into line, and we will. I'll be pleased to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go back.
All right. Long-range plan, or do you have a couple comments on that, Larry?
Yeah, very brief. In terms of that health and beta test planning, did have a chance to go to Washington, D.C. This month and meet with those other 5 cities and with FTA officials, and I think that was a good and successful meeting about the planning going on here and how we use the framework. The only other thing I want to mention is just a little bit about streetcar. There is just an awful lot that's been going on in terms of planning for implementation of streetcar, whether it has to do with the safety and security planning or work and marketing, just a lot going on. This is the month where basically the 60% design of the track, the alignment along the route has been delivered to maps and Cotpa has been able to look at that and make some comments on that, and so that's come along very well. And then also the maintenance facility. The 60% design documents are now with maps as well, and we're having a chance to look at all those as well. This coming month, thanks to your action last month, we will have some officials in town for a peer review of the 60% plans for the maintenance facility, and the folks will be involved in that peer review will be with Seattle and with Tucson, as well as with Little Rock. So we're looking forward to that meeting, that exchange, and trying to develop a better tie with those peers.
All right. Thank you. Good. Parking.
Just a quick comment on parking. The occupancy rate is virtually the same as it was last month. We're at 113% occupancy overall on monthly parkers compared to 112 the previous month. We picked up about 57 more additional monthly parkers in our system.
All right. Any progress on an employee?
Yes, actually, we Kevin and I had a phone interview with the final candidate for the position, and actually Susan assisted in arranging travel arrangements for him on October 14th or 15th to come in for a personal interview. So we're getting very close.
Okay, well, good. All right, marketing and...
Good morning. We have a few events I want to just bring to your attention coming up this next month. One of those is the fall version of the Open Streets event that has taken place twice now in the spring and will take place on the south side of Oklahoma City. It's on Sunday, October 8th, and we will be there to do what we did before and show people how to approach the bus, how to use the bike rack, and answer any questions that they might have. We also have our 8th annual health fair, and that will be on Friday, October 23rd. We've seen nearly about 250 flu shots distributed during that time, as well as other health services. And we have seen interest from some of the surrounding schools about allowing students and some of their families to come during that time of day. And so we somewhat expect a little more than we have in the past. We also have the Mobile Smiles unit, and that's a pretty impressive setup that they have in which they actually can do some dental work there at the site. And so we're just, again, feel like this is a great way for us to bring services to our passengers that might otherwise be a little less convenient for them. Brings it in one spot and also allows them to interact and ask questions that they might otherwise not do. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Michael, the Open Streets event is did you say the 18th?
Yes, Sunday,
18th?
October 18th.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Ride your bicycle up here and tell us about the river.
Yes, Oklahoma River Cruises continues to see a rise in ridership. And as far as our social media marketing efforts, our Facebook followers are approaching 4,000, which we think is a very good number. These riders from all over the world, there are people following us on Facebook that come into town from foreign countries even, that become Facebook followers and help to promote our system. They chiefly utilize the system to get from those hotels out at Meridian, which are still in development. There's a very exciting one coming in that's a homestay type hotel, which should bring us even more riders from there. And of course, we take them down to Regatta Park Landing, where they can pick up a downtown discovery and get into downtown in the Bricktown area. Very good news, there were no cancellations of service in the month of August.
Hear, hear.
In fact, with the exception of May, where service was significantly interrupted with the heavy rainfall, we've had the lowest number of cancellations since 2012. And staff congratulates the Public Works Department on making this possible for us. Haunt the River is this month. It is completely sold out, with 4 cruises on Saturdays beginning October 10th. Staff is considering opening another date, Friday, October 30th, due to the promotion that we have scheduled on October 12th with KFOR TV and their morning news program. That feature will also include information about our holiday charters. On to Spokies. Spokies has also experienced quite a rise in interest. As Jason mentioned, we took over administration of Spokies last year. And when we took it over, they had about 500 followers on Facebook. We've grown that to almost 1,000 now in the 1 year that we've had our marketing department working to promote the service. We credit the rebranding as the chief reason why we have peak interest. And then with your approval of the request for proposals today, we will be looking to bring some new equipment and software online that's more reliable and more sustainable. The refurbished bikes that we just completed with the new powder coating and the new branding can then be used for events. Currently, when we do events, we have to pull bikes out of service. Since we only have 30 bikes currently in the system, this puts quite a strain on the system. Once we bring in new equipment, we can repurpose those refurbished bikes for those types of events. In fact, this morning, Brent Tongo, our general manager who works for Bicycle Transit Systems, is at Blue Cross Blue Shield today promoting Spokies. They are our sponsor, our chief sponsor, and he's out there talking to those folks about the benefits, the health benefits in particular of bike share. Earlier this week, Brent and I both attended the North American Bike Share Association convention in Chicago. There were a lot of options out there. There were a lot of systems that were not present. Like any new enterprise, any new type of industry, a lot of interest. It starts up, the weaker ones fall off, the stronger ones gain momentum. So we were able to review all of the new systems coming on board, some of the new technology that's being offered, and we were very happy to be able to get a preview of all of that in anticipation of the responses to our RFP. Some of the topics that were included were pricing structures, which are still being figured out, but there were some good comments on what's an effective pricing structure, depending on the type of urban environment you're trying to serve. Station placement, there were different types of modeling for expansion, grid options, heat models, that sort of thing, to decide what works best and what grows ridership. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great weather to bicycle.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. All right, any items from the trustees? Jason said he had one. I said, what's new? That's been part of the job for years. So,
got to keep the tradition going. So, yes, I have two items that I'd like to mention. One is I wanted to thank Tulsa Transit for hosting Professional Learning Day with several of us on staff on September the 17th. We took a trip to Tulsa, and we got to kind of tour their facility, look at some things they were doing with their customer service management, some things they were doing with their driver training. We looked at their CNG facility, so it was very beneficial, and we're looking forward to hosting them in the coming months. So I think that's going to be a good opportunity to start exchanging more information with our neighbors down the interstate. The other thing I wanted to mention is Mass Transit Magazine came out with their list of top 40 transit professionals under 40, and our very own Michael Scroggins is recognized in that magazine. So I want to hold the magazine up so we can get a look at that. And page 44, there he is. So we really appreciate everything that Michael does for us, and definitely deserving of the recognition.
well, I deliberately did not receive a vote on our program report to see if Susan was on top of things at our last meeting. So I would now ask for a motion to receive our program reports. So, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Susan. No.
I would just like to publicly thank Susan for making sure that the new guy didn't feel so new. All of my fellow board members and the director have been really helpful. And I can tell you that Susan has been a remarkable asset to me this summer. I will be forever thankful to her, and I wish her very, very well in this next step of her life. So thank you so much, friend.
Well, if she bugs you to know if you're going to be at the meeting. All right, if there's nothing else, then I would say we're adjourned.